Okay, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. We are going to continue reading Sefer Yemei Shmuel, the autobiography of Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz, who was a big Breslover Chassid from Tzfat in the early 1900s to the mid 1900s. We are going to continue from the last video we did, where World War I has broken out in the world, and Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz is telling us what it's like in Tzfat and all the different problems they were having. So let's keep on reading. We're on Perek Yutes, if you do have the Sefer Yemei Shmuel. It says over here, it says that at this time, he's talking in the first person. So at this time, I entered in to learn in the yeshiva of the Talmud Torah of Amsterdam, and we had a lot of trouble from the Turkish army. Every single morning, early in the morning, they would come to the houses and they would search for things, and they would also make sure that everything was super clean, everything was very hygienic, because they said that typhus, which is typhus, I think the disease, I guess, that was very common then or whatever, happened because things were not clean. So, and if they didn't like that the way that the house is clean, they would take the balabayas, the owner of the house, to a mountain, which there is the chomat of Tzfat, the wall of Tzfat. And that was a place where they had a base or whatever, and they would give this guy 30 makos or 50 makos. 50, like I guess they would whip him a lot, and it was not good. And we suffered a lot. And afterwards also we suffered from the army doctors. They were mamish crazy, and they did a lot of tsaras for us. They would go from house to house and from store to store, and they would break everything, and they would, injure people, and they would pull out people's payas and beards and spit in their faces, even to rich people and everything. They did this all, and they would also put heavy fines on people. They would start searching people in the middle of the marketplace. They would check their heads for lice. If they saw a woman who was sitting there washing clothes in a big bucket of water, they would dunk their heads inside the water. They did this to my grandmother, Maras Elka Zechrena Levracha. Hashem should avenge the pain that she had when they did that. That's pretty crazy, man. Basically, Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz says that if people heard that the doctor was coming, so they would just close the stores, and everybody would run and hide themselves. And even still, they would break the doors and they would break things, and they would do a lot of damage. But at least if they hid themselves, they wouldn't get bizyonis by having their heads dunked in water, and they wouldn't get whipped or whatever. There was one Sephardi woman who used to sit, and she was sitting one time making preparations for Shabbos, and she heard that the doctor was coming, the army doctor. She fell and died because of the fear. And people would jump from rooftops to hide themselves. And me, Rosh Shmuel Horowitz now says about me and other kids that we would learn in the Talmud Torah of Amsterdamit, when we heard that the Shtretativ, which is the doctor going, we would jump from one roof to a different tree and hide. And then the doctor got sick with typhus. And another guy came, and he was a little bit nicer, but then the other guy got better from typhus, and then he was even worse, because we were happy that he got sick. And he wanted to take revenge on this. And they started going around with swords and wagons and more army guys, and they were going from house to house. And they were doing a lot of bad things. They were pulling out hair and breaking things, taking all the clothing of people had, and the pillows and the blankets. It took everything they wanted. and they burned it. And it was a bad situation for them. Afterwards, now we're in Parakhaf. Afterwards, the doctor made a decree, and the decree came from Istanbul, which is Istanbul, that everyone needs to shave their beards, and not and nobody could have a beard. And he wanted to right away come and shave everyone's beards. And the Rav Again Chacham Alafandri, who was the Chacham Bashi from Tzfat, She'asar Eitz Yudim Legal, obviously. He sent to this doctor that it's forbidden for Jews to shave their beards, and the doctor said no, we have to do this because it's a decree from the king. And the Chacham Bashi wrote back that first, if it's a decree from the king, then you should shave your own beards of all the Arabs and all the Christians, and then we'll talk about the Jews. And thank God, he said that the doctor was scared of the Chacham Bashi, and he didn't end up shaving the beard of even one Jew. And the doctor said that he wanted to go see this Jew that had enough azas to stand up for him. And he went to go see him, and the Chacham Bashi did not even let him into his house. Because he said it's forbidden to look at the face of a evil person. And the doctor had to climb outside the house into the window to see him from the window. And afterwards, the doctor had to go to the actual war, and he asked forgiveness from everybody in the city. And at the end, he was killed. Kain yoivdu kol oivecha Hashem. And we had a nace. Rosh Shmuel Horowitz says that we had a nace that when this doctor came to our house, this was at the time when they were gathering all the pillows and everything like that and burning everything. And we were able, Hashem saved us, and we were able to, He had mercy on us. And also the reason why is because they whispered in his ears that my father was the brother of Beirif or Beirish. I don't know why they call him Beirif. That's awesome. I like that name. Who was his uncle, right? Rosh Shmuel Horowitz's uncle. His name was Beir, who was a pharmacist, and he was friendly with all the doctors. So he saved us like that. Okay. But it didn't help when before we mentioned that his grandmother also tried that same thing. When he dunked her head in the water, it didn't help with that. But for this, it helped. Okay, fine. He says, and besides all these tsaras of this, we also had tsaras ha'arbe, which is an invasion of grasshoppers, of locusts. At one time, it happened that the wind brought in tons of arbe, and the whole entire Eretz Yisrael was covered in arbe. They covered the sun, it was so dark. And they ate everything. And Rosh Shmuel Horowitz says that there's trees until today that do not give fruit because of the arbe. And now, of course, we're already in a bad, famine, and now this increased the famine a lot, which is, not good. And in some places, they even hurt the eyes of little kids. They took out the eyes of little kids, the grasshoppers, the locusts, whatever we call them. So now, that's pretty crazy. He said that, and then another trouble that came from this was that the Turkish government said that everybody needs to go fight the Arab, everyone needs to go fight the locust invasion. Basically, they were trying to make us kill all of them, and also the Arab would lay eggs on the mountains and in the forests, and millions of eggs. and we had to go find the eggs and bring them and then destroy them in mud. And then they made a thing that you have to bring a certain amount of sacks of eggs, and it was very hard, so we actually had to pay non-Jews to do this for us, and it was just not, just didn't seem like it was a fun time. Even still with all this stuff, it didn't help at all. That there were still eggs that did hatch, whatever the locusts, and I don't know if locusts actually come from eggs. I don't even know that. I'm not like a locust expert, but it seems like it did not help, and there was many more locusts being created, and they were filling the houses and the chutzers and the courtyards and the streets. And all we saw was the color yellow, because they were like yellowish, greenish, yellowish. They would be in our beds. And he said that this lasted for a few years, which is pretty crazy. 1 second. Tov. Let's keep going. Perach of days. And he said also from the sufferings that that we also had from the government, that they were taking from each person clay barzel, iron vessels, metal vessels, copper vessels, gold, silver, wood, food, grain. They took everything from us. It was just, they were just doing a lot of bad things. Everybody was hungry. And we didn't have pillows to sleep on. And it was just not good over here. And now they're talking about, and he talks about how then they started taking people to the army from 18 years and up until 60 years. And there was people that, their grandfather, their father, and them were in the war together. They even took people who were crippled, blind people who had broken hands, couldn't walk. And there are some people that they took, we don't know where they are, and their wives were agunos. Hashem Yishmarenu, Hashem should save us. And many men died on the way. They would walk, and they didn't give them food to eat. Only rabbis, only rabbanim, and people who were, shamishes and synagogues and chazanim, only those guys were paturim, were pater from going to the army. So every single shul now had a rav, shamash, and a chazan, and there was around back then 50 shuls in Tzfat. So they were able to save a lot of people like that. But afterwards, they only let the rabbanim come. To the rabbanim to be pater from the army, but not the shamashim and not the chazanim. And this is also another great tzara. And simple people would be able to, get themselves out of it by paying money. 50 punt zahav, 50 punt of gold. I don't know what a punt is. I don't know. It's like something, okay? And then they would let them be for a few months, but then they would say, okay, you got to pay again in a few months later. And then people would hide themselves for months at a time, and they would search for them. And if they found people that were hiding from the army, then they would kill them, just kill them on the spot. There's people that and there were people that died just because of the fear that they had from doing this. And the uncle, or my wife's cousin, I guess he's talking about later on in his life, because he did get a wife, but I guess talking about now, whatever. The doid ishti balam shalah, and he said that I'm going to redeem myself. Then he said I don't have any money, and he said maybe it's only for a few months. He said maybe it's better to go to the army. I don't understand the story. Okay. I guess he was like kind of like he's like, okay, take me to the army. They're like, no, we want your money. And then they beat him, and it was just a lot of stuff over here. It's crazy, crazy stuff. And then there was another tzara. He's going again. He keeps on telling us about all these tzaras. He said that there was a tzara from the expulsion, the Gerush of Yafo and Petach Tikva. That they threw everyone out of those towns, men, women, and children. That the leader of the Turkish army, who was called the Gamal Pasha, he gave a decree to throw everyone out in one day. They couldn't take anything with them. Everything was left in their houses. And many of these people came to Tzfat. Many died. Many rich people went crazy because they lost all their properties and monies. And this Jamal Pasha made different gezeros, and he burned the land from the Tziyonim. He hung many he exiled from Israel, and there was a lot of fright. And when they would mention his name, everybody would shake with fear. And also, they threw out the people who had Russian descent, and people who had English, background from London, from the UK, whatever, and also people from America. And whoever didn't get on the last boat, they sent them to Khalif, which is in Syria. And they also had a lot of tzaras there. Except for people who decided to become a Turkish citizen. Whoever decided to become a Turkish citizen had to go straight to the army. So yeah, we see that it was not a good situation. It's mamish terrible. In parentheses it says that because then was the Indian of the spying of Aronson from Zichron Yaakov. I don't know what that is. Probably whatever. He probably spied for Israel or for somebody, whatever. So now the Jamal Pasha thought that the Jews were all spies, and they went from house to search. Maybe they found a certain address in Chutzar that people were sending mail to, in England or in Russia or in America, or some Russian writing. And if they found anything like this, they would mamish torture the person, and they would kill people. And there was one person from Tzfat, a Talmud Chacham Yari V'Shalom, a very holy man. They found on him a certain address, and they tortured him, and he died from the torture. And it didn't help that the Rabbanim of Tzfat, they gave testimony on him that he's a good guy. He didn't have any of these things. It was probably just a random address, whatever. So everyone was very scared until the English government captured the land. Let's just read one more paragraph. Yeah, these next few weeks are going to be about the war. He says, in general, it's impossible to tell everything that happened, even one drop from the sea, all that happened in those times. Especially from the last year, which was Taf Reish Ayin Ches, which we had Dever, Magefa, we had plague and Rav and famine, with Tzaras and Mamash B'li Sharach, and how we stayed alive was Mamash and Nes, and Hashem will help us more. Now he's going to go more into it's going to be a few more weeks of learning about this stuff. But yeah, man, this is crazy Avodah. Okay, I hope that was good and people are learning about Shmuel Horowitz's life.